Daisy.
And I'm Terri.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 261. And this week it is Terri's turn to share something. Terri, what do you have?
Well, Daisy, this week I am going to a TED Shorts, and that just sounds like we're taking the shorts from some guy, but no, TED Talks. TED Shorts is a series of presentations that are pretty brief and I think pretty good quality.
Brief, pun intended there.
Yes, Daisy, very, very good there. I see what you did. So this kind of follows up from the last topic that I talked about, in that idea of kind of accepting that things aren't going to be perfect, not believing that we always have to optimize everything about ourselves and that we have to do everything perfectly or we can't do it. So this comes from a woman who is a sociologist named Christine Carter. And she shares a 1-minute simple step to creating the habits that you want to create. I'm like, oh, good. Not a list of 7 or 10, but a list of 1. Okay.
And it only takes 1 minute.
That's right. I don't know that it actually is a list, but it is a simple way of kind of thinking about the mindset involved. And she said, I think when she recorded this, it was in February. And she said, how are you doing on your New Year's resolutions? And, this idea that oftentimes we create these lofty, ambitious goals that we want to accomplish and these great habits that we're going to establish. And so she talks about how oftentimes we struggle with that and sometimes feel like we're failing at that. And so she said, of course, many times when we're thinking about something that's important to us, a habit that we want to get started, we think about all of the good things that it would bring to us. And so she uses the example of exercise, and she knew she needed to start exercising again. You just talked about this last time. And she realized she had all of the reasons in her head that she should be doing this, all of the cardiovascular benefits, all of the, building lean mass, the longevity things, the mental health benefits, all of these things. And yet she still didn't do it. So she said, knowing all of the good that this new behavior is going to bring often isn't enough for us to feel motivated to do it. And she said, one of the problems, as we all know, with motivation is sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. And we really can't rely on that. And we really can't rely on willpower. So what do? She said that the secret is not in coming up with better goals. The secret is not in knowing all of the benefits you're going to get from it. She said that it depends on our willingness to be bad at our desired behavior. And so many of us don't like feeling like we're not good at something. And so we don't want to do it.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
I think you had brought this up before, Daisy, and I thought, oh man, did Daisy already cover this episode? Because I remember having a conversation about this. And she said, she's a go big or go home kind of person. And everything she starts, it is with that expectation that I need to be good at this. So exercise, same thing. Will I be able to run the 5K that you're training for? Will I be able to do this? And she said, if you think about it, being good at something generally requires that our effort and our motivation be in proportion to each other. The harder something is for us to do, the more motivation we need to do it. And again, as I already highlighted, we can't really count on motivation. So when motivation dips, we find that we kind of sink to the law of least effort, meaning that we are going to do the easiest thing. And usually the easiest thing is to not exercise, to not do
it.
Yeah, to not do that thing. So she said that really to kind of change this process, we need to stop trying for the lofty goal at first and really try for the bare minimum. So by focusing on what your minimal effort will be, you're going to do it. but it's not going to be too taxing.
Mm.
And what she finds with people, and in her own example with exercise, is if you do the minimum effort, doing more becomes natural. So she talked about running and, oh, I should run for 25 minutes or I should run this far. And instead, she held herself to her minimal effort was 1 minute. And there were days where she only ran for 1 minute. But for many of us, at some point, you might as well run for 2 now that you've already done 1. And so again, you almost automatically start to make it a habit and you increase it. You get better at it. But for her, it has been really important to only expect the minimum. And so she is someone who runs more now. So she might run for 20, 25 minutes. But she says, I still have days where I'm just not even motivated once I get out there. And so it's okay if I stop after 1 minute. So that willingness to not be good at something, not do it perfectly, not reach some lofty goal. Maybe your goal is that you want to write a book or you want to eat more vegetables in your diet. Well, rather than thinking I have to write a chapter today, can you write a paragraph today? Maybe your minimum effort is a paragraph. Maybe you're not going to incorporate vegetables into every meal this week, but maybe you're going to eat vegetables, 1 bite of a vegetable each day. So again, it becomes something you naturally do. And obviously the goal is that it become a habit. But by making it good enough to do minimal effort, we have such a better chance of making it really stick. She described this better than nothing behavior. So it's not your ultimate goal. It's not your ultimate goal that you would run 1 minute, but running 1 minute is better than nothing. And learning to get into that mindset so that we're not going for perfection or all-out effort as a requirement, but doing anything on this goal is better than nothing. So I think that word in there is really important. And then she uses the term, our wildly unambitious behaviors that we've all been taught, like you should have these big goals and big ambitions. And she really highlights we're going to do better when we are kind of unambitious about these as we're building the habit and moving toward the goal. She said, remember, the goal is repetition, not achievement, because repetition is what creates a habit, not just reaching the goal. That doesn't actually create the habit, but the repetition of the behavior. So going against what everyone would tell us, she says, let yourself be mediocre at whatever it is you're trying to do, but be mediocre every day. Take only 1 step, but take that step every day. So as you think about this again, kind of going back to, but Terri, that's not a big effort. That's really not going to get me very far. We have to break it down, strip those kind of lofty goals down into what is that minimal effort, that better than nothing thing that I could do, so that when I do that every day, it now becomes something I don't even have to consciously decide to do. And again, now the habit can build into more intensity. Okay, if I started with 1 bite of a vegetable every day, now I've started to incorporate them into at least 1 meal a day. Now I eat the whole serving of the vegetable. So it just naturally grows from there. So I really loved her approach to allowing what our brain already wants to do, which is to take the least effort. Start building your habits by taking the least effort. And then eventually you will develop that into more. But without that pressure of you have to do it just right to get it started. So many of us abandon our goals because we're trying to do too much too soon. So I really enjoyed this. Again, just kind of piggybacking off of my topic from a couple episodes ago when talking about just that accepting imperfection, accepting not being good at something. don't do a great run. Do a 1 minute. Who cares?
Yeah, I quite like when you were saying then about what your brain likes, and it's almost sort of sneaking it past that part of the brain by making it so easy, so accomplishable. And it does absolutely perfectly fit with the structure of the Couch to 5K that I've been doing. I'm pretty sure they tell you at the start, they warn against pushing things too far. I'm pretty sure they do. I might be imagining this, but I have a feeling it's one of the things. The one that I do, and there are all sorts of different packages out there, but this is one from the BBC, and you can choose the person who's in your ear, and they just talk to you. They explain what you're going to do, and they give you little words of encouragement, and they tell you how far through you are, and you've got this, and only 1 minute left to go, and just some little running tips as you go, and breathing, and all sorts of things. So they're sort of talking to you, and you can play whatever. I always have music when I'm running, and it's sort of how they sync together, these apps, I'm not sure, but it just sort of quietens down the music when they're talking to you. So you can have all these things going at the same time. And I'm pretty sure they warn you at the beginning, hey, just stick to the program, because they start with a minute. Now it's multiple minutes, but they have you. Towards the end it changes, but for most of the program, you're out there for half an hour. It always starts with a 5-minute walk to warm up and a 5-minute walk at the end to cool down or warm down. Different people call it different things. And then you have the running bit in the middle. But that starts with, I think it's a total of 8 minutes of running, but it's 60 seconds of running, and then I think it's 90 seconds of walking. 60 seconds, you get it, and it just alternates, and that's how you start. And I can tell you, and I'm sure anyone else who's done this can tell you, who's not experienced at all with running, that 60 seconds feels like a whole lot of long time. So, oh, thank goodness that 60 seconds is over. That felt like ages. But they really do warn you, stick to this. Even if you feel like jumping ahead, don't. Just stick to the program, because they take you through these steps for the very kind of reasons that she's talking about. They take you through it in such achievable steps that you do go from Couch to 5K in the program. Now, I've just completed week 7, so I'm heading into the week where I gave up the first time I did. Well, I didn't exactly give up. I stopped doing it and didn't start, and I was pretty cross with myself because I'd nearly finished it. But so this last week is the first week that it's sort of fairly long, consistent runs. You do 3 runs a week. And they build you up, as I say, starting from that. And the intervals of running get longer, and the overall period of time that you're running each run gets longer, and they push you through. And in the sort of previous weeks, you sort of go from a jump from having done 2 sets of 8 minutes to the run at the end of the week. They suddenly have you doing 20 minutes. But then they take you back the next week, back to intervals of 5 minutes, I think, something like that. But this week I've just completed was the first week where all the runs are longer runs, and they're 25 minutes. So I did 3 25-minute runs last week. And that was from the person who was, what did I say, week 7. So that was the person less than 2 months ago who found 60 seconds as hard as that 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it just goes to show that in a relatively short space of time, you can, and I have total confidence that because they're not pushing me that much the next couple of weeks. I think next week is 3 runs of 28 minutes. And then the last week is the final week where you're doing 30-minute runs and plus the 5 minutes either side. And they say it's Couch to 5K, but they're having you run for a specific period of time. And I'm actually not sure that I might even get to the 5K. I was convinced that I wouldn't, because I'm sort of at about 3.5, but I nearly got to 4K the other day running along the seafront. I do get a faster speed and go a bit further when I'm just running along a which makes sense. Running along a solid surface on the flat is different to running round the fields with the dogs, because the ground is uneven and I have to focus more on where I'm going, and it's up and downhill. But, I'll be happy if I push 4K, but I might even get to the 5K in that. But that will be the next thing that I progress to. If I don't manage to do that, I will just keep running until I hit the 5K. And there actually is a weekly 5K run on Saturday morning. So that's sort of my goal at some point, is to go and do that with everybody else. But, it just made me think of that, because you do get these times when your willpower and your motivation feels really high. But as you said, it's quite often there, but then it ebbs away for some reason, and it's not there when you really need it. And so we do sometimes get over enthusiastic about these things and, hey, let's just jump ahead a few weeks because I feel great. And they really warn against that and say, no, stick with the program and really focus on being good at being mediocre. Just take it one step at a time and build it. You talk all the time, don't you, at the fasting method about building that fasting muscle. It's the same kind of thing. Don't try and run before you can walk, pun intended. But it really does pay off to build that muscle slowly. I know people who they get enthusiastic about fasting, actually. And, hey, I did a 3-day fast, and I sort of wince a bit because they sort of do it every now and then. But I've seen, with all the episodes I've edited, with knowing you for so long, the people who end up being really successful are the people who build it slowly and build up those strong foundations as they go. And it's the same with almost anything you do. It's certainly the same with running.
Yeah, and I think she used an example when she was talking about the running that I think you really highlight here, Daisy, is you don't have to start with, I'm going to be an excellent runner, or I'm going to become a marathon runner, versus I'm going to run this little bit. In this example, it's 3 times a week. And then you suddenly find, I am a runner. Like, now it's something I'm so used to doing that it's part of my week, and it's part of how I experience my world, and it's part of how I think about myself. But oftentimes we have gotten discouraged when we start out expecting ourselves to become something that we're not yet good at. I just think that's such an important piece, because I hear myself when people are like, hey, Terri, do you want to go golfing? I'm like, no, because I know I'm not good at golfing. And so if you want to make that a habit, taking it in really small chunks that you can do consistently, accept that you're going to be bad at it. Don't measure how good am I. One of our friends is a golf pro, and she encourages people that she's working with to go practice what they did in their lesson with her by just hitting balls for 45 minutes. She didn't say, you have to hit it this far and you have to do it this way.
Just hit the ball.
Just go do it this week. Go out there 5 times this week and just hit for 45 minutes. Create that muscle memory. Create that natural momentum so that this becomes part of your natural way. So first, I wanted to listen to this episode because it was very short, and I thought, great, there'll be something I can pull from this. But I really think it fits with much of what you and I have been talking about recently, about how to make our habit goals, not just the outcomes, but the habits themselves possible, and accepting and embracing that you're not good at it yet as part of how to get started. I think is really key. Minimal effort. Anything is better than nothing. Doing a little bit is better than not doing anything. And that wildly unambitious effort. I love that. I'm going to hang on to that one.
Yeah. It's funny. I think, a lot of thought obviously went into this BBC app that I listen to, because they do drop in little things like that as you're going. like you were saying to me the other day in my ear as I was going, hey, you're a runner now. You just ran for 25 minutes. You're a runner now. They drop little things like that in, like the moment when you go from running more than walking in the intervals. Hey, do you realize you just ran more than you walked? And so they have these little bits of encouragement and little bits of advice. But it is just, bit by bit. Don't expect too much. Hey, you've got a minute left. If you feel like pushing it and going a bit faster, do. If you feel like slowing down, that's fine too. And so I think it fits very well with that, but I think it just fits with anything else you're trying to do.
I love that part that you just described, that they might even say, and if you don't feel like doing more, that's okay. Gosh, if all of us felt permission when we were struggling with something to not have to push it. I think so often we think of some type of a training program like that. They're always going to be saying, no, do one more, do another set, increase your weight versus, hey, and if you don't feel up to it right now, that's okay. I think that can go a long way for so many of us. And I get it. Some of us are afraid that if I don't keep going under that mentality of push it every time, that I'm just never going to accomplish things.
And to keep going on at the same level if you need to. It just reminded me of one of the things they say. They quite often tell you, what's coming up in the next week when you get to the end of the week, and we're maybe going to be doing a longer run. So if you don't feel you're ready for that, feel free to repeat this week as often as you need to before you want to step up. So they really do work with everybody who might be doing it and try and cover every base. But it is amazing how quickly a habit does start to establish and how you're feeling the benefits and are wanting to do it. I said, didn't I, that the only reason it got off the ground was because I was able to combine it with the dog walk. So I was there anyway. I'd put my running gear on. I was there anyway with the dogs. The weather was right. The ground was right. There was no reason not to do it while I was there. There's a lot of inertia to actually get going. But once you're there anyway, you're much more likely to do it, aren't you? But I've done a couple of runs now where it's been on top of a dog walk. I've gone down and done the one along the front, and that's been an extra, which I wouldn't have thought I would have been doing at the start. So that momentum does build quite quickly.
Absolutely. It's exciting, Daisy.
Yeah, so I like that. I like how it fits in with something I'm doing right now, but it also fits in with probably anything that anyone out there is trying. And I totally understand that mentality of, and it's something I have to fight against doing, is wanting to be really good at something when you start doing it.
It reminds me of when you did that stained glass class.
Yes, I was just thinking of that. I was very frustrated when I couldn't do it as perfectly as all the YouTube videos I'd been watching. I've prepared for this. I've watched 1 million YouTube videos. I know exactly what I should be doing. I can picture it in my head. So why isn't it working like that?
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so until we meet again next time, where we're going to have a quick catch-up episode, I have some exciting news I might want to share. I'm not going to tell you any more than that. I hope you have a very wonderful week.
Take good care, everybody.